From deep within the pages of the Wildstorm universe comes the Superman mob boss Slaughterhouse Smith, who I will tell you more about on this episode of Lesser Evils. Slaughterhouse Smith made his first appearance in Team 1 Wildcats #1 that came out in 1995. When readers first meet Smith, he is celebrating the theft of trucks filled with military weaponry. He was looking forward to becoming one of the most powerful criminals in the world. The celebration is put on hold when an alien daemonite called Hellspawn appears, offering Smith something even greater. Sometime soon after, Slaughterhouse Smith gives an exhibition of his abilities against a group of Hellspawn's soldiers. Hellspawn is impressed by the gangster, but Slaughterhouse Smith wastes no time asking the alien what he could possibly have to offer in return for him betraying all of humanity. Hellspawn answers that when he conquers the world, he will give Smith all of America. During the conversation, Smith tells what little there is to his bare-bones origin. In his teens, Smith just began to get stronger until he had straight-up superpowers, as he states, like a comic book character. Smith came to power when his mobster father was killed by his rivals. In retaliation, Smith murdered the entire enemy gang single-handedly, claiming to have ripped each of their spines out one by one. I wish I had the images, but the bloodbath's never shown. After taking over his father's crew, he built it into the empire he currently runs. After some consulting, Smith aligns with Hellspawn and joins his little group called the Cabal. Accompanied by Smith, Hellspawn launches his attack on a nuclear missile silo. Slaughterhouse Smith takes part in the subsequent slaughter, as his name would imply, until he learned that Hellspawn's first target would be New York City. The fact that he lived there and had family there caused Smith's humanity to come back, and he turns on Hellspawn. Smith quickly finds himself outnumbered as his own men surprise him and throw in with Hellspawn. All of the drama is interrupted by the arrival of a group called Team 1, who are there to stop Hellspawn's plan. Team 1 was gathered by another alien, this time a cherubim, whose name is Saul Baxter, and whose race hates daemonites in a beef that goes back ages. Smith attempts to fight alongside Team 1 as they kill Hellspawn's men, but the members of Team 1 state openly that they consider him just as much of an enemy as the aliens. The entire brawl begins to spin out of control as a nuclear missile fires, and the entire series wraps up with everything going to black and the ending never being revealed. 4 years later, in Wildcats Volume 1, Issue 14, we learn that the attack on the facility didn't end well for Slaughterhouse Smith. During the fight, Saul Baxter had hit Smith with a mind blast that had left him in a coma. In the modern day, Smith was still in that coma, kept alive by machines. A former associate of Smith's, who was one of the treacherous fucks from the fight in the 60s, visits the former mob boss to reveal the news that a grandson of Slaughterhouse Smith's has powers too. Unfortunately, the associate made the mistake of revealing to the young man his heritage before realizing the guy might be batshit crazy. Seemingly having reached his end, the traitorous bastard swallows poison and turns off the machines attached to the comatose Slaughterhouse Smith, feeling that it was the time for both of them to die, which he does on the floor next to Smith's bed. The first time readers are introduced to the younger Slaughterhouse Smith, he is chilling with a woman after what is assumed to be a sexual encounter. They get to talking about families, and the younger Smith reveals his intent to get revenge on Saul Baxter, or as he was known in the current era, Jacob Marlowe. Hearing this, the lady partner notes how funny it is that Marlowe is her last name. Smith, looking sinister, laughs too before murdering her soon after. Using the internet, Smith tracks down another victim. He follows the target to the mall, then slowly seduces her over the course of the day. After going back to her place, the pair have sex before Smith kills her too, and burns her last name into the wall. Days later, the police are at the latest murder scene left by Smith, when a pair of mysterious National Park Service agents take over the investigation. They reveal that the killer has murdered and dismembered 30 women all down the East Coast. And at every crime scene, the same name is burned into a wall. Smith locates another potential victim through the shopping records, but the Marlowe he finds is actually Priscilla Kittian, a former member of the Wildcats who was called Voodoo, and a friend of the card's real owner, Jack Marlowe, who I will get to in a bit. After driving to where Priscilla is staying, Smith locates her at a mall and immediately begins working on her. Smith and Priscilla have a deep conversation about family and their history before Smith convinces her to go out dancing with him. After hours of partying, the pair decide to refresh themselves back at Priscilla's place. At the apartment, Smith is introduced to Priscilla's roommate, Jeremy Stone, who is also a former Wildcats member who was called Maul, but he sees himself to his room feeling a bit intimidated, leaving Priscilla and Smith to flirt more. Just as things begin to heat up, Priscilla changes her mind at the last second and she tells Smith that they should call it a night. Seemingly okay with the choice, Smith agrees with Priscilla before burning a hole through her stomach with his eye lasers. While Priscilla lies on the floor bleeding, Smith takes time to monologue about his history and his goals like a proper villain should. Even through the pain, Priscilla laughs out loud when she realizes Smith doesn't know that Jacob Marlowe, his target, had died, that he had been succeeded by Jack Marlowe, who is a former reincarnated super soldier, an android bodyguard member of the Wildcats, and currently the publicly recognized son of Jacob Marlowe, making him the CEO of his father's multi-million-dollar corporation. Fuck, I love comic books. Smith proceeds to burn Priscilla more, until Jeremy finally hears the screams and attacks Smith using his giant size. Smith gets smashed around, but manages to blind Jeremy and is thrown away, allowing him to escape. Jack Marlowe learns of the attacks and checks on Priscilla, who has had both of her legs cut off. While there, Marlowe is met by the agents of the National Park Service and is informed about Smith's history, his connections to Marlowe, and his serial killing activities. Smith, knowing who his real target is now, heads to LA where Jacob Marlowe's business headquarters is. At his headquarters in LA, Jack Marlowe calls in his friend Cole Cash, also known as Grifter, who was another former Wildcat, to prepare for revenge against Smith. Jack Marlowe and Grifter discuss their plans for handling the madman, but the conversation is secretly overheard by Maxine Manchester, yet another former Wildcat, also known as Lady Tron, who had been feeling left out lately. In the meantime, Smith happily visits the sites in LA. While chilling in his hotel room, Smith catches an announcement about a public speaking engagement Jack Marlowe is doing, and sees it as his chance to kill him. Maxine attempts to help Marlowe find Smith by scanning hotel sign-in records. She finds many Smiths registered, and ends up smashing through several wrong doors before she finds the Smith that she is looking for. Even though Maxine is a kick-ass cyborg, Smith is able to overpower her. Maxine is teleported away before she is destroyed, ending up in Marlowe's office cosplaying as the Human Torch. Angered that Smith hurt another one of their friends, Marlowe and Grifter prepare for the speaking event. The next day, Smith arrives at Jack Marlowe's appearance/trap and immediately makes his presence known. Also on site are the agents of the National Park Service who see the sign. While Smith searches for Marlowe, he encounters the agents and leaves them regretting it. After finding Marlowe, Smith goes full-on crazy, not even caring that Marlowe also has powers. After Marlowe insults him, Smith unleashes with his heat vision, but is surprised to discover Marlowe isn't human. This doesn't stop Smith from letting loose more crazy villain babble about how badass he is, until Grifter caps his ass like Sam Fisher, and that is the end of the second Slaughterhouse Smith. Years after his grandson's death, the original Slaughterhouse Smith returns in Stormwatch Post-Human Division, issue number 1, alive and well. He is present in a gathering of different Wildstorm villains that gets interrupted by a pair of unfortunate police officers. Soon after, Stormwatch Prime arrives and the battle spills out onto the streets. There, Slaughterhouse Smith participates by killing more officers before escaping. In response to the incident, a new Stormwatch team is put together made up of street-level agents to hunt down the villains involved. After several superheroes are killed using powers similar to Slaughterhouse Smith's, the team tracks him down to a bar where he is sitting and drinking casually. The team quickly assembles to question and arrest the old mob boss. Smith denies having a hand in the murders, and sits unworried while he opines about how badly things have changed since his 35-year coma. He is sad to hear his grandson was a murderer of women and would have killed the bastard if he wasn't already dead. After downing a shot, Smith calls the team on their stalling tactics, before putting the team down fast and hard. With more talk about how shitty the modern day is, Smith starts to literally bring the house down around him and the Stormwatch team. Leaving the group to be buried under the rubble, Smith burns a hole through the roof and flies off. The team survives, but doesn't get another chance to get back at Smith before the entire world is ruined in a superhuman apocalypse. So why do I think Slaughterhouse Smith is worth taking a look at? First, unlike a lot of supervillains, Slaughterhouse Smith has a really simple origin. There was no vat of chemicals, radiation bombs, or cosmic rays. Like a Marvel mutant, he just woke up special, and I appreciate the simplicity. I like the confidence Slaughterhouse Smith showed, along with the way he carried himself. This guy was an old school mobster and lived the high life. He didn't go out of his way to hide his powers and readily joined his men in seeing plans through. Although it didn't help him in the end, he was smart enough to seek advice on matters like a real leader. With the inclusion of the younger Smith, readers got to see a lineage story that went bad, but about a supervillain. The older Slaughterhouse Smith was already a bad guy, but his grandson was a straight-up serial killing psychopath. Also with Slaughterhouse Smith, we get a kind of Captain America effect, where he is put out of commission for decades, only to wake up in the modern day where so many things have changed. I personally would love to see his perspective fleshed out more. That leads to my last point, which is readers never got to see Slaughterhouse Smith return after he flies away. Slaughterhouse Smith strikes me as the kind of guy who would survive a superhuman apocalypse, and the kind of cool villain who should have popped up after DC folded in Wildstorm during the Flashpoint event. While DC already has many noteworthy supervillains, there's always room for more, especially one that could come back from a long coma and retake the criminal world.